Hi. All right. So here's our vintage Santa sled. Sorry, it doesn't fit all the way on my screen, but here it is. We're going to follow the printed instructions and step by step paint our vintage Santa sled. This is the same basic instructions as canvas. You just be doing this on canvas. This image would be traced on a white canvas, and we would paint the background, the blue, the first. I like these burnt, let's see if you can see, the burnt wood look on the sled part. I'm going to leave them like that. I'm going to paint the main part of the sled first, and I'm going to decide later if I want to leave this like the burnt wood look or paint this black. I'm not sure, and it's going to be like a personal choice for you too. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we do, we're going to start painting the background. So we're going to take one of our flat brushes and go around everything that's not the Santa, the hat, the star, or his beard down here. So all this area here is going to be the Calypso blue. That's right here in your paint pods. I put my paint in the paint pods too, just to make sure that the kits, have the same amount of paint and there's enough for the project. So have your cup of water ready and a paper towel to dry your brush when we switch. Don't worry about switching out your water too much. Once you rinse your brush real well and dry it off and switch colors, it's really no big deal. All right, so our first step is really just painting the background this really, really cool blue. So you just take your paintbrush and follow the lines. And we'll get to the next step when our background's done. One important tip if you're fairly new to painting, you can just line your brush up to the line that you're painting towards and then brush out away from it. And it kind of keeps your lines pretty clean. But acrylic paint is super forgiving, so don't overthink it. When we paint the star, if we have blue or we don't want blue, it can paint over it, so no worries. So this part might be a little bit confusing. I just wanted to point this out. So I have too much paint right there. Just visualize like this whole top part is his hat. I have mine upside down right now, by the way. I turn my stuff around a lot when I'm painting. So the star, we're going to paint later. So this whole inside right here, all the profile of his face is also going to be this blue. It's the background. So go ahead and paint that. This little loop at the end, this is part of his beard. So I didn't paint that part blue. That's going to be white. That's part of his beard. Okay, I think we have the background all blue. So we are going to move on to the next step. We are going to fill in the Santa hat with red paint. So we're going to just focus on all this top part here above his little white poof thing, and all that's going to be red. So grab whatever red brush or whatever brush you want and start with the red. So we're going to do this whole part here and then have fun with it. You might want, because red tends to be a little translucent or maybe not as vibrant as you want, go ahead and put one coat on for now. With acrylic paint, you don't really want to do two coats when it's wet because it kind of just gets clobby and yucky. So you just want to put one nice coat on here. And then if you aren't happy with the way that red is standing out or you want it just to pop a little bit more, you can go ahead and add another coat of red later, but you would want to wait till after this paint is, I'm going to turn this around, dry. You want that first coat totally dry before you try to go in and add more red paint because it kind of just gets yucky. So this, don't worry about it too much. Just kind of come in there with your brush. It doesn't have to be perfect. So we're going to go over this poof part with white. And yes, it does cover red. So just go ahead and you can even use a smaller brush if you want for that part. So I'm just going to kind of like, let's see, can you see this? Yeah, so you can just sort of like even smush it in and kind of just like vibrate your brush a little bit like that and kind of just get them in those corners. It doesn't really have to be perfect. You'll see when we go over it later with the white paint. And then yeah, just drag that paint out and away from the line. Okay, so the gold that this called for, it doesn't show up on the brown very well. This glitter gold doesn't either. We're gonna do like several coats, but you can sort of just like go along the lines here. And then to get glitter to kind of like come off the paintbrush, just kind of like dab it. So I would just kind of trace the lines and then kind of dab and just get some of that gold onto the star. And it'll pop when we're done. We'll probably need to do a couple coats of this gold, and that's okay. I mean, gold glitters. Amazing. So keep playing around with the star with the gold and do one coat, let it dry, and come back. We'll come back later and do another one. At least one more. All right, so I have enough glitter on my star for now. I can add more later if I want it to just pop a little bit more. So now, step 4, we are coloring in his face. So everything that's his face, go ahead and do that. Skin tone color. Actually, this bottom part right here is his beard, so ignore that. You know what works good? Oh, here's a trick. Here's a tip and a trick. It's really loud. Wipes work amazing. Like even if the paint is wet and it like got on another color, you can take a wipey and it comes off really nice. So just his face, go ahead and paint this skin color, and then we will you can shade it with a little bit of, I would just probably leave it. I would just keep his face this peach color. See, here's an example. I got carried away on his nose. And you can just sort of take your wipey and wipe it off. Another newer to painting tip. See, look, just fine. Make sure the brushes that you painted with and you're not painting with at this moment, and they have paint on them still, keep them in water just so the paint doesn't get hard on them. So this peach is not like covering the way that I would want it on this wood. So this looks like it's definitely going to be a 2-coat color. So we can let it dry and we can come back to it later. Okay, so our next step, with your regular gold paint, put it on a plate or something. This is probably the first coat we should have put on the star, so I'll probably add some of this later. The problem was I didn't have it mixed well. Yours is probably not mixed well in the paint pot either, and so you'll have to stir it up with the back of a paintbrush or something, get that mixed in. So the next step says you want to keep your white pure. So with your clean paintbrush, just go ahead and grab some out. Quite a bit. We're going to do his beard. But we're going to mix a little bit with the gold. This old brown on my plate is dry, so don't worry. Let me close this one now. Gigantic paint of gold paint pot. All right, so it says, the directions say we're going to grab a little bit of white. So get your brush white, and then on like half of it or so, you can sort of grab some gold with it. Oh, you might not have saw that. I just sort of like swiped it and grabbed some gold with my white on my brush. And we're going to just sort of like follow the strokes of the direction of his hair. So I'm going to start over here, and you can kind of see how the white and the gold kind of just like mixes in together, and it'll give that really cool like antique look. So just go ahead and grab your white, grab some gold, and go in the flow of his beard lines here. And yeah, don't overthink it. Just get the paint on here. And yeah, you are going to want that antique look with the gold paint with the mixed in. And then just sort of go around this, because that little puff is not pure white either. We're going to mix some other colors in there. So his face line wasn't real clearly defined, but like any beard, it just sort of starts growing on a certain spot of the face, right? So go ahead and finish filling in the white and grabbing a little bit of gold with it. No worries if it turns out too white your first pass through, because we can take some gold and add it in later. Okay, so the first coat of the white and gold is on there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the puff just white, and then I'm going to just kind of add some gold strokes through it when it's still wet, kind of like how the sample picture shows. So go ahead and add that. I'm kind of far away to see this part. I gotta just take my brush and, you know, wiggle it up there to the line. It doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, it's like a little cotton ball. So, and go ahead and fill all this part in. So with his hat, you can just, while the white paint is still a little bit wet, you could sort of just take the gold and just sort of like brush it in. And we can smooth it back out with like the edges of the hat. We can smooth it back out with some white paint. Just take your, you can even just take your brush and just make sure there's no like harsh lines here. Kind of just antiquing the hat too, around the edges. And a little bit of gold. Just sort of smush. That is a technical term in painting. Smush it around. All right. And when you're happy with that, we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so if you're happy with the coverage of the white on his beard, you can move on to the next step. If you're not and you just want this more opaque, you can go over it again. I'm just going to go ahead and add the other details to it. It'll pop more when we get, you know, the final little lines drawn and such. So you can take your the same brush you just had, and you can take the turquoise paint and use the thin edge of the brush and just add some turquoise streaks in his hair. So you can sort of just, you know, don't overthink it. Don't put too much on there. Just sort of like go with the hair strokes, and you can, you know, use the reference photo to help you figure out where you might want yours. I wouldn't load the brush up too much. You kind of want to have, you know, light strokes, like that's like too much, but I can smush this over with white, so I'm not very worried about that. No big deal. That's the cool thing about acrylic paint, is everything is fixable. I'm going to leave his mustache alone, and then just add some more blue just around, just kind of highlighting it. Okay, and while that brush is wet, I'm not even going to rinse it. I'm just going to add some of that white that I have left. And go over that turquoise real quick, where I think it's just a little too blue in his beard, and just sort of smush it around. There's that word again. And kind of just tone it down a little bit, because some of that got a little bit bright. Some might like it shocking like that though too. It's your choice. This is your art. So I'm just going to kind of go a little bit over that blue a little bit. Oops, see? I'm not stressed about that. I can fix it with my blue paint, so I will fix it. That's what happens when you start smushing around. Okay, and after the turquoise, you can add a little bit to his hat and star too. So let's do that. So if you look at the reference photo, there's just sort of some, oh, you can't even see, sorry. You can kind of see, like in the corners here, some like streaks of that turquoise and white. Kind of have them mixed right now. And then you can also, I'm not sure this is dry much. I'm going to add more glitter to this too. You can add some turquoise streaks in here as well. All right, and now, so now we're going to take that gold paint, and at this point, you can also take that gold paint and you can just sort of like go over like some of these parts where you have the turquoise in the hat, just to add some more texture. You can also take some gold paint and add it out throughout the beard too, just to kind of give it some more highlights of the gold. And you can kind of just follow like the pre-drawn lines here, kind of just wherever you want him to have his golden locks. You can add that now. And then we're going to use black later. I actually would suggest using a permanent marker or a black paint pen for the outlining that we're going to do rather than paint, because these are pretty fine lines and it's a little more difficult to do it that way. So when we're doing like finer lines, I actually prefer to use like a marker, a paint pen of some sort. So I know a marker didn't come into your kit, but I do know that most people have a permanent marker. So a black permanent marker would even work great. So looking at this in the camera, I'm like, this is too blue. So I'm going to just go over that with some gold and see how it like tones it down. And you can even add more white if you wanted to as well, whatever you want. Don't overthink it, just have fun. This is fun art, not necessarily fine art. All right, so he's coming together. All right, let's see what's next. So every once in a while, it's important to like stand back from your painting. So just now, before we moved on to the next step, I was like, oh my goodness, look at that. I completely missed his little eyebrow. So I'm gonna get my white paint. And the reason I put it in paint pens or paint pods is because it helps me measure how much I need to include in my paint kits. And it is cutting it close with the white that I started with. So in my paint kits, I'm going to make sure I include plenty of white because that part's important. And like I said, the actual sled part is your choice. I am liking this burnt brown color. I am not going to paint over mine, but that is totally up to you. If you have extra black paint or you want to add, you know, black and gold, whatever you want to do, that's cool. This is your painting, make it your own. So yeah, our next step, I'm going to make sure my paint and everything is dry before I do the next step because we're outlining with black. It's just kind of going to make Santa like pop right out of this sled. So, okay, I got his little eyebrow done. I'm also going to cover his whole eye right here. And the lines of his eye I'm going to save for black. I'm not going to worry about painting over his pupil right now because I'm going to use a paint pen or a permanent marker and color that part in. So I'm not worried about that. Just going to cover this part. And it's going to look weird for a minute, but it's okay. We're going to fix it. Okay, so while I'm waiting for everything to dry before we do put some black paint and follow the lines of his hair on his beard, we are going to use the paint and then follow it up with a little bit of white just to kind of soften it. So this is step 8 on your written instructions, I believe. But before we do that, and while I'm letting this dry, I'm not happy with the coverage of his peach. It's kind of blotchy if you look at it closely. So I'm going to go ahead and cover his face again. And so the paint is wet, so I'm going to let that dry. So one more coat on the face, and then I think we should be pretty good. Yeah, it's covering much better with 2 coats. And then I'm also going to fix any mistakes that I see, like when I went over right here. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to put some blue right here and it'll be all fixed up. All right, so I'm fixing my little white mistake over here. And you can just double check your areas. Make sure you're happy with your lines, your colors. Did you miss anything? Is there anything that needs some touch up? And go ahead and do that now before we go ahead and do our black. And yeah, his mustache got a little crazy right here. And then it'll blend in, so don't worry. All right. And then I see some gold that I smushed up here. Just getting carried away by smushing. So yeah, go ahead and fix anything that looks like it needs a little touch up. And it's almost done. Looking cute. All right, I'm gonna save the marker for the more fine line details, like around his eye and such, and maybe around his mustache and everything. But the big hairlines that are black when you look at the reference picture, go ahead and take your a skinny brush. Actually, I might want a little smaller one than that. Yeah, this one's good. Take your black paint and follow those lines, and we're going to kind of outline Santa's beard now. So go ahead and follow these. Sorry. Okay, so the beard is pretty much outlined, and then I'm going to turn this over. I went to, and I added a few black highlights up here, low lights, whatever you want to call them. What am I going to do now? I'm going to do like the big lines around his hat. I'm going to do these small little lines with the pen later. So, and then his eyebrow and his eye, and his little nose crease later with the marker. So grab a marker if you have one, because we'll be doing that. So however you want to get it on there, you can do little strokes. You can load your brush up and just kind of draw with it, like you're drawing with a pen. It's whatever you're comfortable with. And I would just use, little bits of paint, kind of just smear it across that line there. And we'll do the other inside of his hat too. Okay, to finish this up, we're just tracing the small little outlines with a marker, or if you have a black paint pen, you could use black paint, but you'll need a really small detailed brush and just kind of wisp it through very carefully, and then we'll be done. And I'll trace the outline of the star and his hat. So this part's fun. We're going to take some Snow Tex and just add some texture around his beard and hat. Use a Q-tip or your finger. Just get some. Just dab. And it adds a really cool texture, like snow. All right, looking pretty done. I decided I'm going to keep this burnt wood color. I'm not going to paint over those. I just like the way that it looks. One more option, if you have white left and you want to do some snow, just take the back of a paintbrush and dip it, and you can just add little dots of snow on the blue. Gives it a nice look. And then you're done. I hope you love it.